Hi, everybody. So yes, my name is Dustin Stewart, and as Peter said, and that was actually a fantastic introduction by Peter. He usually calls me Justin, so we're already off on a better foot. I do run a number of our development programs through the office, primarily on the female side, but I've been involved now with the male POE and running all of our male development programs, which is our Director's Cup, our Rising Stars Plus, and some of the things that we're going to talk about here today. Had previously been working in the coaching program, which gives you a really good look at, especially as we move into the player development, one of the most important factors, and again, we are going to talk about that, which is the coaching side of it. So I've been now, as Peter said, about 5 years, which has given me a lot of time to run through these programs and see a lot of different aspects of our organization, be involved with the regions on how they run their programming. So we're going to talk just a little bit today about the programs that we do offer and just about some of the things that we're either looking to improve, enhance, or even just change a little bit within our programs. So as I said, spring development programs are what we are going to be talking about. So our spring development programs that we offer. On the female side, we offer our female Pee-wee prospects, which we're now into, I believe, the third year of offering. On the male side, we have our Rising Stars Plus, and then we have our Director's Cup Prospects program. So these programs have all been around for numerous years, and we've been operating pretty much the same way throughout all of them. They're designed to all mirror each other in certain aspects in terms of how the programs run, and we'll work through some of the differences involved there. So the overall rationale behind our development programs is to provide our athletes with some type of opportunity from a development standpoint to work through a pathway that starts at Pee-wee and eventually will end with their eligibility into the program of excellence. So we have our female Pee-wee prospects on the female side for that. We have the other two programs on the male side, but there's supposed to be a pathway so that those athletes have an entry point with one of the programs and then eventually work their way towards our provincial team programming, either on the male or the female side. The goal of these programs is to provide a fun, competitive, and affordable development opportunity. And the affordable aspect is something that Bernie and I, when it comes to our development programs, really try to push pretty hard, is making sure that we don't price people out of the game, whether that's with the programs that we're going to talk about here today, or whether that's with our provincial team programming, or any other aspect of the programming that we offer through Hockey Manitoba, or through some of our various regions, trying to ensure that we provide a program that's going to be fun, that's going to be competitive for our athletes, and that's going to be affordable so that we can allow an opportunity for as many of our kids as possible to be a part of these programs. So the male player pathway and what we have, entering in a Pee-wee, we have our Rising Stars Plus program. As kids move through Pee-wee, they get into the Director's Cup prospects, which starts off in Bantam, and then eventually our athletes move into our male under-16 provincial team program. On the female side, we have our female Pee-wee prospects, starts off with Pee-wee. We then move into our female under-16 program, which is something that we started just a couple of years ago, and now we just completed our third year in our female U16 program, and then eventually those athletes will move through that pathway and finish off with the female under-18 program, which operates at the midget level. The video that we just saw there was just from our Director's Cup program from this past year. We do those videos with all of our development programs. It's actually the gentleman at the back here who are going to be filming the season opener this weekend. Put those together for us. It's just a nice little kind of marketing tool for them. But that's just a few snippets from our Director's Cup program from this past year. Director's Cup is probably the longest standing of our development programs outside of our provincial team. I remember even Directors Cup being around back when I was playing. So Directors Cup is designed as a program for our first-year Bantam athletes. So for this upcoming year, that will be our 2006 athletes. We have roughly 240 athletes that participate in Directors Cup program each year, and that's spread across all of the regions. There's a certain way that each of those are allotted, and some of that information is on the website in terms of how that's separated by the regions. But we have roughly 240 kids from across the province that participate in Directors Cup. Directors Cup consists of a 6-week skills program. So we usually see most regions running some type of a tryout for their first-year Bantam athletes on the male side, either at the end of January during the development weekend, or we'll see some regions, depending on numbers, depending on what's going on in their region, might push that a little bit later until the end of their season play or just before provincials. Because what we see in most regions is at the conclusion of Bantam Provincials, or for the kids that are playing in the Bantam AAA League in Winnipeg, we'll usually see those athletes then move into Directors Cup around the middle of March. And we start with our skills programming in the middle of March. That runs all the way through until the beginning of May or the end of April. One of the things that was added into the Directors Cup program a couple of years ago was the inclusion of a development tournament that takes place in March. It's usually the first weekend of the spring break. And that tournament is broken into 2 different host locations. One is hosted in the western part of the province. One is hosted in the eastern part of the province. And those tournaments are utilized as an opportunity for those kids to come out. They play a couple of exhibition games as their region. So we have a team Eastman, we have a team Parkland, so on and so forth. They participate as a part of their regional team, play a couple of exhibition games, and then we bring out skills coaches who come in, work with the regional coaches, and run some skill sessions for those athletes. And those skill sessions are all based on position-specific skill. So that's what happens in March with those players. That's just for our rural athletes. Winnipeg operate a little bit differently with some of their programming for Directors Cup. They'll offer their VP Cup program, which begins usually at the end of March, beginning of April, runs through the beginning of April with skill sessions. And it's really a very similar format where they run some skills, they play some exhibition games within Winnipeg, and then select the kids that'll move on to Directors Cup. So we have that tournament that takes place in March. And then the entire program concludes with the Directors Cup Prospects Tournament, which is on the AGM weekend in May. So that's what we look at with our Directors Cup program. With our, here we go. Okay, here's our Rising Stars Plus program. I don't know if anybody noticed, but there was a small cameo in that video by our Director of Development, Bernie Reichart, who had to fill in with one of the teams when the coaching staff wasn't able to attend for the weekend for that particular team. So our Rising Stars Plus program, this is probably just about our newest of our development programs that has been operating for a couple of years. The Rising Stars Plus is a program for our second year Pee Wee boys. So for this year, that will be our 2007 born male athletes. The Rising Stars Plus, again, follows a pretty similar format to what we're doing within the Directors Cup program. We have the similar number of athletes with 240 athletes. With this one, we run a slightly shortened skills program. Usually in most regions, that'll be roughly about 5 weeks. The difference with this program versus the Directors Cup is that in this program, we typically wait until the end of spring break before we begin with any of our skills programming, where our Directors Cup starts prior to the spring break week because we have that development tournament that happens in March. So a slightly shortened program when it comes to the skills for the Rising Stars Plus boys, but they run through their 5 weeks of skills programming, and then they conclude with their tournament which takes place on the same AGM weekend as the Directors Cup boys, and that happens in Winnipeg with those athletes. So the Rising Stars Plus, same ideas with our Directors Cup. Regions will host tryouts. Those tryouts will take place, again, either on the January development weekend or sometime following that period, depending on what the region has set in place. And then they'll select the requisite number of athletes that's outlined in our operations manual for that program, and then we move on from there. Winnipeg, again, if you're with Winnipeg, operates a little bit differently on this program. They mirror, again, what they do with the Directors Cup. They operate their Pee Wee Cup, which was a brand new program that came about last year, and run a similar format where they operate with some skills and then some exhibition games and select the athletes that will move on to participate in the Rising Stars Plus program. So our female Pee Wee prospects. This is selfishly probably my favorite of the development programs that we operate in the spring. And part of that is because when I started at Hockey Manitoba just about 6 years ago now, on the female side, we had one development program, and that was our under-18 provincial team. Since that time, we've now gotten to a point where we have a female Pee Wee prospects, we have an under-16 female provincial team, and then now we also have our under-18 provincial team that still operates. So we've gone from having one female development program that really only serviced a small number of athletes to having 3 programs that now we're reaching a much larger number of athletes across all the regions. The female Pee Wee prospects is probably each year one of, I would say, our best received programs. Being at the tournament, it's always a pretty positive environment where sometimes on the male side, you never know. So with the female Pee Wee prospects, that's for our first and second year female Pee Wee athletes. So it's a dual age group. So this year that will be our 2007 and our 2008 born female athletes. Slightly lower numbers on the female Pee Wee prospects. We have roughly about 204 players for the tournament. We have 12 teams with rosters of about 17. To be perfectly honest, it's been, I think, pretty much every year in the program we've been a little bit short of that total number when we get to the tournament. So we're still working towards that. The genesis of this program started with our female bantam prospects, which some people in the room might have remembered from years past. The female bantam prospects came about because we were looking to create a new female development program. We had previously run a CCM skills camp that happened in Winnipeg and Brandon, and then eventually it just happened in Winnipeg, and then we determined that we had to look a different direction on the female development side. So we opted to go with the female bantam prospects, and then when we created our under-16 provincial team for the girls, we bumped our female bantam prospects down to create the female Pee Wee prospects. So we have our 204 athletes roughly that participate in this program. Regions do host their tryouts for this. I know a number of regions typically, a tryout might be a bit of a loose term, but they have some type of a selection process for their athletes to determine who's going to go on to participate in the program. They run a 4-week skill development program. That 4 weeks is pretty much born out of the fact that, again, like with the Pee Wee boys, we don't start until after the spring break week. And the tournament for our female Pee Wee prospects takes place in Portage at the end of April. So we really only have about 4 weeks to run through our skill development programming on that side. And the issue that we run into is that once we start getting to the end of April and the beginning of May, we start to run out of weekends prior to the long weekend where we can start running different programming or where we can run a tournament. So we've selected to run at the end of April for the tournament for the female Pee Wee prospects. We run that out of Portage, which has been a fantastic facility for that tournament for the last number of years. And again, it's always been one of our best received programs. Both the coaches, the female athletes that are there have a fantastic time with it. And we've seen a pretty steady increase in the skill level with some of our girls that are moving up into Bantam that have been coming through the female Pee Wee prospects and are moving up into our Bantam AAA teams, our Bantam AA teams in Winnipeg, so on and so forth. Fall and winter development. The one thing I didn't really touch on there but does still operate is our Rising Stars program. The majority of regions do still operate a Rising Stars program that happens throughout the fall, winter months. Rising Stars continues to operate, and regions are encouraged to make sure that that program still happens. That takes place for the Pee Wee boys that would be moving on to the Rising Stars Plus, and consists basically of once a month to 2 times a month. Those regions will operate skill sessions that the athletes will participate in based on a technical package that we have put together and can provide to the regions. On the female Pee Wee prospect side, this has been kind of a growing thing for us, where we have regions that run what's referred to in the operations manual as a phase 1 programming. I know there were a number of regions that operated that last year. We encourage them to keep doing that again this year to offer an opportunity for those female athletes to attend once to twice a month a skill session based on the technical package that we provide, leading into those athletes entering into the Rising Stars Plus program or into the female Pee Wee Prospects program. The technical packages that we have for all the programs. Director's Cup we've had for a couple of years. We had that one revamped by Garth Mitchell from Elkhorn, who is here today. Garth put that package together for us, and then we've had it kind of touched up a couple of different times. But that technical package was developed the same way that we've done for now our female Pee Wee prospects and for our Rising Stars Plus. We take a look at, from a provincial team standpoint, what are some of the skills that we see as being a deficiency for our athletes when they get to the provincial team, when they get to POE? We start to determine what those deficiencies might be, and then we ask our skills coaches or the gentlemen that have been putting together these technical packages. I shouldn't say gentlemen, we had Ashley Van Aglen from the Avros put together one of our female Pee Wee prospects technical packages. But we ask them as past provincial team coaches to take those skills that they see as being either a deficiency or things that these athletes really need to start developing and put that into a easily consumable technical package that coaches can roll out and execute within their regions. And we break that down between any of the programs that we have leading up in that pathway. So with our female Pee Wee prospects, the package that we developed this past year for the Pee Wee prospects in spring is a very individual skill-based package. For anybody that was here that might have coached it last year, it is very individual skill-based. And then when we move up into the U16, we start looking at some different skills on that side. On the male side of things, the Rising Stars Plus one, again, is a little bit more individual skill-based. And then as kids move up into the Director's Cup program, still a heavy focus on individual skill in Director's Cup. But those athletes now are starting to look at a little bit more of the technical skill or some of the team tactics or the concepts that we're looking for towards our team tactics, within that technical package. But there has been a lot of work to look at these to try and determine the best way to lay these out so that our coaches have, again, programs and technical packages, that are easy to execute, are laid out effectively, and are things that the kids can work on in those skill sessions. We made an investment a couple of years ago to get away from the previous years where we had still been having to hand draw all of our drills. It is 2019. So we purchased a program, so now we're able to lay all of these out in the same format on a program called Flex Coach. Very easy to read, very easy to send out and distribute to coaches. So we have those technical packages for all 3 of those programs. They constantly get looked at and then sent out to the coaches each year. Instruction. So when we look at the development programs in the office, Bernie and I spend a lot of time talking about all 3 of these programs and what can we do to improve them. And as much as there are areas of the program that we look at and try to improve, at the end of the day, what we do in the office can only go so far. The actual improvement to the programs and the actual impact and effect of the programs is entirely dependent on the coaches involved. So the people that are brought in as volunteer coaches for Director's Cup prospects or for female Pee Wee prospects, or for your minor hockey programs. Those are the people that can affect change. As much as we put together a technical package and drills and different skills that we want these athletes to work on. The coaches that are involved, the people that are on the ice with the kids, the people that are teaching and correcting, those are the ones that actually ensure that the development happens within these programs. The important part then is if we're expecting that out of these coaches, we as Hockey Manitoba, so Bernie and myself, and all the people that are in this room working with the minor hockey associations, we have to make sure that we're supporting those coaches and that we're putting them in a situation where they can succeed. One of the things that we've started to see in some of the regions over the last couple of years, regions are starting to bring in a skills coach who's somebody that's there to support the volunteer coaches that are running these programs. A couple of years ago, when I was at one of our Hockey Canada meetings on the female side, we were talking about skills coaches, and on the POE end of things with the provincial teams, we were all talking about who we had hired as skills coaches for our provincial team programs. And I think it was one of the gentlemen from Alberta that looked and said, when did we stop expecting our coaches to teach skills? When did it become a situation where now we had to hire skills coaches in order to make sure that our kids were learning skills? I think the reality is when we look at these programs, we put our coaches in, we select those guys or those girls that are going to be coaching these programs, but the reality is we need to provide the support to them. And when you're looking across the country and you're looking at what's happening, extra skill development and extra staff for that skill development is the reality of what's happening pretty much everywhere. So we're starting to see some of our regions adopting that format. I know Central Plains was one of those. Pembina Valley has been doing that a little bit with their 3 spring development programs where they're bringing in somebody as a skills coach who is there to provide mentorship and support to the volunteer coaches that are working in that program. And that's something that we would encourage regions to look into going into this year. And that doesn't have to be something where you have a skills coach who's on the ice every single time for every single Director's Cup prospects practice. But that might be something where you have a skills coach who works in partnership with the volunteer coaches, making sure that everybody's on the same page with the technical package, making sure everybody has the understanding of the skills and the concepts that we're trying to teach, being on the ice to help with error correction, being on the ice just as a resource to those coaches to make sure that we're getting as much impact as possible out of these spring development programs. Goaltender development, admittedly, one of the areas that we have been a little bit behind on with our spring programs has been on the goaltender development side. What we are working on going into this upcoming spring is we are going to have for all 3 of the development programs a goaltender package that works in conjunction with the practices that our skaters are doing. So we've taken the practices that our skaters are working on, and we have our goaltending group working on putting together a package that will work hand in hand with those practices. But it's important that we make sure, as a region, with our program, that we have somebody incorporated into that that's selected as a goalie coach. Within all 3 of the programs, there is an honorarium built in for a goaltending coach. Now, I know admittedly that the amount of money that's involved there doesn't go too far, but it is there to provide the opportunity to bring in somebody that can assist with some of that goaltending development. And we are putting some time in to make sure that our goaltenders have a technical package that's focused on developing them as well as it is developing all of the players that are involved in the program. And then just the end for me. Bernie and I talk about this in the office and we kind of lament this every time, but the reality is with these programs, we're talking about 6 weeks at the most that comes at the end of the season. So 6 weeks of skill development that happens at the end of the hockey season, that cannot be the be-all, end-all for what we're doing when it comes to our skill development for minor hockey. Running stuff at the end of the season and then the kids go off, end of the school year, whatever it might be, they get into the summertime. We preach multi-sport, we preach long-term athlete development. We don't want our kids on the ice all the time. So to be running a program at the end of the year and expecting that to be the main push of skill development does not work. It has to be something that works as a complement and works hand in hand with what these kids are experiencing throughout their minor hockey season with their programs that happen in their home associations, happens in their home regions. We have the technical packages for these. To be honest, we're not very worried about those technical packages getting out to some of our other coaches. It's not something that we're distributing widely. But we do want to make sure that if we have, a AA team in our region that operates at Pee Wee or operates at Bantam, if we have certain house league teams and coaches that are looking for some extra skill development that they want to do, having those people, involved in our Directors Cup, our Rising Stars Plus, or our female Pee Wee prospects is a huge benefit to have them seeing what's happening in that program, taking that back to their minor hockey programs the next year. But regardless, these technical packages are also there as resources if coaches are looking for extra work on skill development. But at the end of the day, we have to be making sure that what we're working on in these spring programs is something that carries over to what's happening within our minor hockey association programs, and that we're holding, on our end of things, that we're holding ourselves accountable for our regions and our associations, making sure that we're holding our programming accountable as well to make sure that these things are flowing into what's happening in the everyday life of these hockey players. I'm not going to go through for questions right now. If you have questions regarding any of these programs throughout this weekend, both Bernie and I will be around. You can contact us, at the office as well. If you're one of the people who's going to be working on any of these development programs within your region over the course of the year, we have operations manuals that I'm just finalizing following our council meetings this weekend, but those operations manuals will be sent out. There really isn't going to be too much in the way of changes to the overall structure of these programs for the 2020 season. But we'll be providing those updated versions for everybody to take a look at. That's going to be operating within those programs. And again, if you have any questions, anything you'd like to know regarding how these programs operate beyond what we've talked about here today, Mr. Bernie Reichard has his hand up. Go ahead, Bernie. As of right now, within our 3 programs, they are highly recommended for our athletes in order to be eligible for our provincial team programming, but we have not made the push of these programs being an absolute mandatory thing for athletes to be eligible for POE. But what Bernie and I have talked about in the office with that is the things that are involved in these technical packages and the things that are being taught to these athletes when they're attending these skill sessions are things that our coaches are specifically looking for when we are selecting our Team Manitoba, whether that's on the male or the female side. That's where the technical packages have come out of. They've come from our provincial team coaches who have identified these as being the areas that our athletes need to improve upon, and therefore things that our athletes need to learn. So as of right now, we strongly recommend that athletes be involved in these programs, but to this point, it is not something where if you do not participate in the Directors Cup prospects or in the Rising Stars Plus where you wouldn't be eligible for POE. But we do strongly recommend that athletes look at these as programs to be a part of, because we would like to think that we do provide programs that have a tremendous value to athletes and again are being conducted in a way that's affordable, competitive, and fun for those athletes. But again, if you have any questions regarding any of this stuff, you can contact either Bernie or myself at the office, or we'll be around again this weekend. I appreciate everybody listening to what I had to say today. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend.